And now it's time to consider the path of your feet, for crying out loud.
Today we're going to be looking at a video from a guy who's coming after my alma mater, BYU-Idaho, and he claims that the patriarchy is alive and well in the hallowed halls of Brigham Young University, Idaho. So let's take a look at this video.
BYU-Idaho had this culture of that the women's degrees didn't matter as much as the men's. And the engineering classes, the accounting classes were like 95% men. There just were very few women in any of those, whatever you want to call it. But it was just, there was this system of patriarchy that the girls would drop out to support the husbands. Or like if the husband had an internship, the women would go with them, right? And it was never the opposite. And
we were kind of a strange couple in that I stayed when you went on your internship. I stayed back and kept my job and stayed in school. People were like, oh, you're going to get a divorce. You can't be separated for 3 months. And I was like, well, my degree is really important to me and my job is important to me.
We spent 12 weeks apart our junior year so that she could keep going on her degree because it mattered. And she did take her minor. Her minor was clothing construction. And that she took into building her business that she does now, which is sewing and crafting and online content, right? So she still used her education, but I just hate the dismissiveness of women's education. I've always thought that was bizarre.
What are your initial thoughts as you watch something like this? You see that messaging. What are your thoughts?
I just dismiss it outright. Like it's just not an accurate representation of that experience. It's wild. So the idea that, first of all, the church does not want women to become educated.
Wait a second. Are you dismissing women's experiences in education? Is that what you're saying? Or are you dismissing his claim?
I'm dismissing this man's claim for sure. Yeah.
Way to strike against the patriarchy.
His claim has been dismissed. Yeah. I think that I'm not quite sure where he's getting this experience, because I know that there's a lot of women who do take turns through college or drop out when their husbands get a job or an internship. That happens, sure. But the church is never that's not like a church policy or a church teaching.
Or
the church doesn't say
policy.
Or a university policy. That's not happening on that level at all. And the funny thing is, like, the 95% men in accounting, and what was the other one he mentioned was like engineering. Yeah, like, hey buddy, that's how it is in every single university ever, because women don't want to study that. I wish they would. Sure.
He needed to get into the communication courses because those were predominantly female.
Oh yeah, or like sociology or psychology, like any of those are predominantly female. Most of college nowadays is predominantly female. But he's just chilling in the one quad on campus that is like 95% male. He's like, there's a problem here. This is the patriarchy. Like,
this is it. I found the patriarchy. Here
you
it is.
just found the most boring part of campus. That's
right.
all it is.
So some of the cultures I noticed, because you didn't go to BYU-Idaho, so you cannot have opinions.
I cannot speak on this.
You can't have opinions at all. Some of the cultures that I did notice at BYU-Idaho when I was there was a heavy LARPing culture. So LARPing was alive and well at BYU-Idaho.
Oh, nice.
You would see them with their foam swords whacking each other at Porter Park every single Saturday. You had the leader was interviewed by the news station. His name was Mahanrai, and I was just like, all right, yeah. Oh. So the LARPing culture,
you have to with a name
awesome.
Like Mahanrai.
Yeah,
you have to with a name like Mahanrai for sure. Like, that's just your calling in the church
100%.
board.
Yeah,
Chief LARPer.
Yeah, LARPer's quorum president. So the other culture that was alive and well when I was there, longboarding culture. There were so many longboards when I was there. It was everyone on the sidewalk had their longboard. They were going out. They were having fun. There was a strong hammocking culture. Going back to the cringe, like earlier in the episode, yeah, that was kind of cringy. A lot of hammocking culture. Then I think the other culture was, predominant showboating, like a weird showboating culture. And what I mean by that, it makes for great people watching, if you're into people watching. You go to Porter Park, you just set up, you get LARPers on one side of the park. On the other side of the park, there would be like guys rollerblading in a tank top playing the guitar as they singing to themselves as they just like circle Porter Park. And then there was like this other guy who would ride a 4-wheeler into the park with a box of like ducklings, and then he would get the ducklings out and then just like dump them on the grass and like just lay next to them and like pet them and stuff like that in front of everyone. And it was just like, dude, what the freak are you doing with those ducklings, man? So,
man,
there was plenty of culture at BYU-Idaho.
I mean, to break that down really quick, like,
go ahead.
First group, the LARPers, they're the happiest ones there. Just side note, they have a mission, they have a purpose. The guy longboarding and playing the ukulele in the tank top, that's a cry for help. Get that man some help. He is alone and sad. And the guy with the ducklings is just he's just a serial killer. I'm pretty sure. He's just trying to trap somebody.
Keep an eye on that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's dangerous. So there is, like you said, there's plenty of culture there. That's culture. That's true.
The oppressive patriarchal culture where there were big classrooms filled with professors that were teaching the men and the women, saying like, okay, both of you, since this is a church institution, we need to make sure that the women get out of here and that the men succeed. Okay, you understand? Didn't see that. Didn't see any of those classes at all. I must have missed it. Maybe the flyers got lost somehow. Maybe the LARPers took too many. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm not buying it. I didn't see any of that when I was there. But Hayden, you're a man, and men can't speak for this. It's like, okay, well, I'm a married man, and I met my wife at BYU-Idaho. So what happens there? Okay, so I met my wife at BYU-Idaho. We get married. It's a happy time. And then I finished my degree before she finished hers. I have an internship that was in another state. What did we do? Did I tell my wife? Did I fall back on that patriarchal training and say, you have to come with me and give up your education, woman? Or did I say, I'm going to live in this state. You're going to live here. We're going to make it work. It's going to be a little bit tough, but I want you to get your degree. I did the latter. And for 10 months, we were separated. We were completely separated. And I would drive back up to Rexburg on the weekends, but during the week, I was going to my unpaid internship and working as hard as I could so that I could finish my degree, get back up to Rexburg, and so my wife could finish her degree, and we could go on our merry way. And that's what happened. I finished my degree, she finished her degree, and one of the things that she brought up, which is really cool, in one of her courses, and she majored in biology because she's really smart, in one of her courses, she had a professor that told her, like, unless you can guarantee me that you're not going to get a divorce, that nothing's going to happen to your husband, like he's not going to die, or that nothing serious will happen where you have to become the main breadwinner in the family, you should not give up your education. That was the kind of messaging that she got from a professor at BYU-Idaho. If there was a patriarchal system in the halls of BYU-Idaho, you would think that the professors would all be in on it, right? I mean, that's my assumption.
Who else would be enforcing that system, right?
She got the complete opposite message from that. So, but Hayden, maybe this is just a one-off. This is just a one-off. You're being ridiculous. Can it? You don't know what other people's oppression has been like. Well, I think we would probably see that bear out in the numbers. So why don't we run the numbers, see what the spreadsheets have to say, and then we could talk then. This is from College Tuition Compare. So this is BYU-Idaho's graduation rate. It goes into a lot of the different statistics down here. So this is from the academic year 2023 to 2024. All right. So there was a total of 1,761 students that actually graduated. Let's see how many of those were men and how many were women. Let's see this patriarchal system in action. All right.
There we go.
There was 565 men that graduated last year and 1,196 women that graduated last year from BYU-Idaho. Oh, man.
Now, I did not graduate in math, so I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and say that I think there were more women than men that graduated, which means that there were more women than men taking classes, right? That's how that works. So I think I think they're full of it, you know? I think that they had a singular experience and the numbers just completely contradict that.
Well, I mean, maybe those numbers are wrong. let's go to a trustworthy, reliable source. Maybe Pew Research? Maybe? Let's pull up Pew Research. Let's see what they have to say. Okay, this is Pew Research, educational distribution among Mormons. I guess they didn't get the update that we don't refer to ourselves that way anymore. I'll give them some grace.
It's going to take some time.
All right, so let's go down here. This is Gender Composition Among Mormons by Educational Group. This isn't just BYU-Idaho. This is for across all universities, across all colleges, by our religion. All right? So when it comes to high school or less, the men is on the left, men's numbers are on the left, women's numbers are on the right. So high school or less, 45% male, 55% female who graduate high school or have less than that. Some college, 43% men, 57% women. College, 46% men, 54% women. I mean, again, I'm not a math professor, but I'm looking at these numbers and it seems like there are more women graduating from college in our religion and from these religious institutions than there are men. So what's going on there?
And this is not like in spite of teachings of the church saying women shouldn't go to these universities. In fact, the church has created these universities, these tithing subsidized universities, to help men and women, more than men at this point, go through and get a degree.
Sure.
But the numbers don't bear out to prove that this experience that they had where they feel like the church or the university is dismissive of women's education. It's just not true. And that's something that I've grown up knowing, is that the church was great with, helping women obtain higher education. Like that's been a focus for decades now.
For a really long time. Utah was actually the first territory to, I think it was the second. I think it was behind Wyoming to pass women's suffrage. So women's rights was one of the first states to do that. So I mean, that's something to pay attention to. But I want to kind of focus a little bit more on this couple. All right. So one of the things that I take issue with is that they had a tithing subsidized education. They got married from this institution. So they found like their happily ever after at BYU-Idaho. They used that education to create a successful company. And then they turned around and claimed that they were oppressed and that this was a nasty, awful institution. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like a spunky guy that just is filled with vinegar, but to me that seems a little bit ungrateful. There's some ingratitude.
You feel a little salty about that?
maybe I'm feeling a little salty to stay on brand, but man, I don't know. I feel like that might be a little bit ungrateful to say like, oh yeah, the place that got me to where I am today was terrible, horrible, awful. Where they are now healthy, happy, contributing members to society. They're like, yeah, the step that I took to get here was a terrible step. Hated it. Awful. Terrible.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, there's other strange cultural things going on at BYUI, but if you're looking for a place to get the most bang for your buck in terms of education and the cost, like, it really can't be beat, So I feel like they maximize their value, but then they turn around and, like you said, there's a gratitude issue there.
But I mean, they're trying to get you to make you believe that the religion, but also the institution, BYU-Idaho, did not want them to succeed. And I don't see that, They make the claim that women, a lot of women drop out or choose to stop pursuing their education because they need to travel out of state for their husband's job or their husband's internship and stuff like that. As I think about that claim, what comes to me isn't that this institution is telling me that I need to give up my degree for my husband or anything like that, as much as let's reason together as fully functional adults. Let's sit down, let's pray about this, and let's decide what is the best move for our family to make right now. And in some instances, that might be the wife saying, all right, yeah, I'm going to pause my education right now so that my husband can go get his education, start making money, and then I can finish my education later. Would I recommend that? I don't know. I mean, I didn't. I felt like Chanel needed her degree. And that was the revelation that we received for ourselves. But these are adults now. These aren't kids anymore. This isn't, Disneyland or Neverland or any of that. This is just adults saying, I'm going to make a decision on my own. I don't think we should be putting that on an institution or on the religion.
No. I think to wrap this up, what I would say is, like, what do they want BYUI to do? Do they want more women to be graduating than men? Because that's already happening. Do they want more women in STEM courses? Because that can happen as soon as more women want to be in STEM courses, right? In being in a STEM industry myself, like, there's so much opportunity for women in computer science, in engineering, and accounting. Like, it's out there. People, I feel like it's an easy one if you could stand the absolute boredom of it, right? Which a lot of women, to their credit, study the things they're interested in, which is good, right? Like, that's a good way to go. So they're posing a fake problem or an unreal problem with no actual solution. So there's no value to what they're saying.
The problem I take with it is mainly that they didn't point out any specifics. They just kind of used a lot of vague, slippery language saying, like, the system of patriarchy and oppressed women and dismissed women and stuff like that, where in my experience, it was nothing but supportive. They have so many online courses. They have the Pathway program, which enabled myself and my wife to be able to complete our degrees online, which was super helpful because that enabled us to complete our degrees while we were living apart and stuff like that, instead of having to add an extra semester of me having to be back on campus. So, I mean, that was super helpful for me. That helped our family. The other thing is, Chanel decided, like, when we were married so this is years after we graduated, I had already received my master's. Chanel wanted to go get her master's degree. Okay, and so if this were a religion problem, what do you think the response would be from our religious community if they heard that my wife wanted to go get an education, a master's degree?
Oh, I mean, if we're following the same painted picture here from this video, they would dismiss her because she's already a stay-at-home mom. So why would she need more education, right? Like, she's already raising kids. They'd be totally dismissive of that, which I'm absolutely certain you're going to say is not the case.
Well, let me tell you the horrible, heinous, terrible things that they did, okay? They offered to watch our kids while she was studying because she went at like a kind of like a pay-as-you-go program. So she did a great online program to get her master's degree, and she decided that she was going to do it in 6 months. And this was going to be really, really intense for 6 months. Yeah. And it was. Oh, yeah. As soon as I clocked out of work, I was home and I was on dad duty. I had 2 kids and I would take over. So for the rest of the day, after 4 o'clock, she was in our office on the laptop, taking her courses, taking tests, and getting through the material. And she wanted to do this herself. I was okay with her taking as long as she needed to. But she was like, I want to get this done fast. So I was like, okay, I'm there with you. I took the kids every single day at 4. I put them down. On Saturday, we called them Dadder Days because the whole day she would just spend to get her degree done. The ward would give us treats. I mean, they just gave us supportive treats, and they would just doorbell ditch those on our door saying, like, hey, you go, more power to you, and stuff like that. And I was just like, man, this oppressive system is just so terrible and nasty. They scheduled play dates so that my kids, so they were giving me a break when I was watching the kids. They gave Chanel a break from watching the kids and studying at the same time. She was studying, she was working as well. And the thing is, the ward was nothing but helpful, nothing but supportive. Now, after she got her master's, did she immediately go into the workforce? No, she didn't. She didn't want to. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. She felt like she was more fulfilled as a stay-at-home mom. And I was like, good, great, good for you. Let's do that. And that's the decision we came to as a family.
That's because the church teaches that education is valuable unto itself. Like, that's what you're taught, is that that's all you take with you to the next life, is what you know and your experiences. right? So education has its own intrinsic value. And that's why everyone in the church, why we're seeing like sky high numbers of members of the church going to college, right?
Right.
It's baked into the belief system.
There's this quote from Dallin H. Oaks. There's this article that says, "As a young woman, should I be more focused on education and a career or on becoming a wife and mother?" And Elder Oaks says, "We know that family is central to the Creator's plan, and that mothers are primarily responsible for the nurture of their children. And we also know that, for a variety of good reasons, both men and women have been counseled by prophets to get an education. In addition, we know that many women will either need or want to pursue careers. President Dallin H. Oaks, first counselor in the first presidency, has said that for women, the choice is not between either family or education and career. Timing is what we have to choose," he said, "and we seek the inspiration of the Lord and the teachings of his servants in doing that. Plan to get an education and have a plan to have a family. You can also plan to have a career. In all of this, your focus should be on following Heavenly Father's plan and seeking his will." So, in my experience at BYU-Idaho, were there girls and women there who were only there to get married? Yes, absolutely. There were girls there that literally would tell me, like, "Yeah, I'm just here to get married." And that, to me, was not coming from the church. That wasn't coming from the institution. That wasn't coming from anybody but them. They were there saying, "Yeah, I don't really want to pursue education." And it's like, yeah, that's fine. You're an adult. That's your prerogative. Go for it. But everything that I was taught, everything that my wife was taught was pursue an education, prepare yourself against hardships, prepare yourself for a successful life. And the education is the key to that. In Doctrine and Covenants, we read ye out of the best books. Like, we're commanded to study, we're commanded to get education. And that's something that is a command for everybody.
And to the church's credit, like those men and women who just want to get married, like the church is actually trying to urge them into the next phase of life, which is higher education, then job, so on and so forth. The church says, keep moving forward, keep bettering yourself, gain an education, and the marriage thing will happen along the way, right? So, I mean, yeah, I think that they're absolutely incorrect on this one with their video, and hopefully they see why now.
But the other part is, like, I don't want to cast too much shade on these people. I do want to express how I want to call attention to the Mormon Stories podcast in showing, like, these guys aren't interested in reality. They aren't interested in what is actually happening as much as these guys are interested in promoting something that may align with the goals and intentions of that channel.
Right.
I don't know. The messaging from that channel is anti-family, it's anti-church. And so if they see something that matches that messaging, they are more than happy to push it out, even if it goes against what is really happening. Like, boots on the ground actually happening. And so I do take issue with that. Like, I think if you are going to be putting messages out there, you should at least be checking them to make sure that they're accurate. So if someone is actually saying that, or if you are a life coach or a therapist or a PhD or whatever, and you're trying to help people through this, shouldn't you be checking them with the truth and saying, like, well, maybe this is your, like, what experiences led you to have that idea? Or did you know that more women actually graduate than men? And what do you mean by patriarchal system? Instead of saying, yes, and affirming without question. And so I did want to call that out. That is kind of gross. And so for that reason, we call these people to consider the path of their feet. It's kind of gross when you paint an entire institution, especially my alma mater, that was super great, and it was really affordable, and it helped me get to where I am today as, like, a no good, dirty, rotten, pig stealing great-great-grandfather that set you up for failure.